All right. There's Mr. McCracken. So Al, can we get you to lead us in the pledge of allegiance?
Please stand. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
All right, next up on the agenda is deletions and corrections to the agenda. Does anybody have anything they'd like to?
Bourne moves to approve the agenda as presented.
Okay, is there a second?
Just point of order, we need to do a roll call.
That'd be great, thank you. Okay. We start with you, Mr. McCracken.
My mic is on. Matt McCracken. John Gamelke, present.
Al Bourne.
Jerry Good.
David Mihatis.
Rusty Neal.
Tony Perry.
So Rusty, you had a,
I will second the applicants.
all right. So then we want to welcome Miss Rebecca Riddell.
Did she zoom in? She said she might try.
She's not here today.
Yeah, she had a pre-scheduled vacation and she was going to attempt to get on, but she was unable to do so.
Okay, well, welcome Rebecca, absence. We need to approve the minutes from our last meeting. Does anybody have any comments about that? So we're gonna approve the minutes. Does somebody want to?
I'll make a motion to approve the minutes as written.
Bourne seconds.
Pass. Ready? Now we're at the elections of officers. And I would like to make a statement.
Mr. Good, I'm sorry to interrupt. I know there was a motion and a second on the approval of the minutes. Was there a quick voice vote on that? I didn't.
So we have to vote on every motion and second.
You're absolutely right. I apologize. So could we start out with you, Matt? Or no, to approve?
Yeah, I do approve. Oh, sorry. Turn on mic. I approve the minutes. Matt McCracken. John Gamelke, approve.
David Mihatis approved.
Rusty Neal, approve.
Tony Perry approved.
And I approve.
Al Warren shook his head. Yes.
Approve, yeah.
Okay, so that passes. Okay, so we're free to go on to election of officers. I'd like to make a comment about Mary Jo, all the years that she's served here. And a huge amount of gratitude this community has for what she's done. And it's been a huge undertaking. I respect Mary Jo very much. I believe that the community does as well, so thank you. Then as we get ready to elect officers, I have a comment that I need to make. And that is due to the appearance of a conflict of interest, it would be irresponsible for this board to put Mr. Perry or Mr. Weatherford on the board for this downtown development authority. I suspect malfeasance may have occurred and it should be investigated. Our bylaws state when a conflict of interest appears, it is the duty of the board member to make such interest known immediately. and shall henceforth refrain from voting or participating on the transaction involving such interest. The bylaws also say willful violation of the provisions of this section constitutes malfeasance on the part of the member of the board. We should all realize the gravity of the decisions made by this board. We are here as stewards for the public and not just a select few. I believe that if we elect certain members to this board of directors, then they would be recused constantly because there is a constant. That's my 2 cents worth. So do I have a nomination for the chair?
Mr. Chairman, Bourne wishes to nominate Mr. Tony Perry as chairman of the DDA Board of Directors.
Okay, can we get a,
I'll second that motion.
yeah, it's, it says here we don't need to second. That's why. Okay, can we take a vote, please? Starting,
Matt McCracken, I vote yes. Aye.
John Gamelke, aye.
Bourne votes yes.
no,
David Mijares, yes.
Rusty Neal, I.
Tony Perry abstain.
Art Rutherford, yes.
okay, so pass. I believe at this point, then, don't even take over.
Thank you, Jerry.
Yeah, I gotta get my 2 cents.
I would have been nervous.
Thank you, Mr. Good, for being thrown in that situation and stepping up. We appreciate it. I guess before we proceed, I just want to make clear that on the record, you are accusing Tony Perry of malfeasance.
No, I didn't accuse. I said I suspect and an investigation.
Okay. We will continue with the election of officers. Next on the agenda is to elect a vice chair. Do we have a nomination for vice chair? And I will point out, as are in your notes, that you can nominate yourself. And it's okay if we have multiple nominations. We could have a nice discussion and then vote or make a motion.
I'd like to nominate myself for vice chair.
Mr. Gamelke nominates himself.
I will second that.
We don't need a second. As
Just
Mr.
nomination.
I just-
as Mr. Good pointed out, we don't need to second. Is there anyone else interested in the position?
I was interested, but if John is interested, I will withdraw my interest.
We can put it to a vote, Russ. You'd be good at it too.
No. I think you do a good job.
Yes, thank you both for being willing. So it sounds like we have a nomination for Mr. Gamelke as vice chair. We will take a roll call vote, starting with Mr. McCracken.
Matt McCracken, aye.
Bourne, yes.
Good, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mijares, yes.
Rusty Neal, yes.
Rutherford, yes.
Okay, now we would like a nomination for secretary.
Can I do both? If I need to, if nobody else wants to, I have no problem.
I would probably say no, as some of the processes that are set up or will be set up for kind of dual control. That's one of the control positions, so I would say that's not advisable.
I would express an interest then as secretary.
So I hear a nomination for Mr. Neal for secretary. And hearing none other, we will call for the vote. Mr. McCracken,
McCracken, aye. John Gamelka, yes.
Born, yes.
Good, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mijares, yes.
Rusty Neal abstain.
Yes.
Okay, for the fund position of treasurer. Even though Ms. Riddell is not here with us today, she did reach out and express an interest. She had more than 30 years of experience in the medical field, including CEO of, I think, up to 75 medical providers, doctors. She expressed an interest to exercise that side of her brain, and Mr. McCracken expressed an interest to keep working very hard, 18 hours a day. So I would nominate Ms. Riddell in absence for the position of treasurer. Yes.
Mr. Chairman, is it even appropriate to vote on as an officer, a person who has not yet been sworn into the board? And if that's true, then I would move to table this nomination until the next meeting.
Point of information.
She's been sworn.
Al, she was sworn in at the council meeting that she was elected, and her statement, the actual oath of office has been signed and countersigned and has in fact been passed to the secretary.
Actually, I-
Thank you for the clarification.
You're very welcome.
I do have a copy of that.
Good, good.
Okay. Does anyone object to, I guess it's that thing, if you're not here, you get elected to do the fun jobs.
Yeah.
Anyone object? I see none, so we'll call for the vote. Mr. McCracken,
McCracken, yes. John Gamelka, yes.
Born, yes.
Good, yes.
Perry, yes.
Mijares, yes.
Neil, yes.
Weatherford, yes.
There's a item on here for the discussion of the name of these positions. From my perspective, it is chair, vice chair, secretary, and treasurer, not president, and vice president. Is that your understanding, Rusty?
I'm sorry, say that again, please, Tony.
There's a agenda item to discuss the actual titles for the chair, vice chair versus president, vice president. I believe it's chair, vice chair.
In further reading, I think it is for this particular body, chair and vice chair.
Okay, so
There
with
was
that,
a question in my mind when I was reading through Robert's rules, trying to figure out, the procedures for this opening up the meeting. Robert's rules makes it appear that it should be president and vice president for something, but in fact, it is chair and vice chair.
And if I may, Mr. Chair, in your bylaws, it does say chair of the board and vice chair.
thank you, Mr. Wilson, Mr. Neal. All right. So on the agenda next, we have two presentations, and I do believe we have both groups here, the Wagner Project Group and the Williams Project Group. We're going to go in order as it was placed on the agenda, so I would invite Mr. Wagner to come up and
Mr. Chair.
present to the DDA.
Mr. Chair, could I interrupt a second? I've had conversations with both of these groups about development of my properties. So I'm going to recuse myself from both of these. And I'll just be in the lobby when we're done.
Thank you, Mr. Weatherford. That is appropriate.
I also have qualification that I'm working with the Wagner team. I should probably also as a civil consultant.
I concur. I assume everyone else concurs.
Yes.
Thank you, gentlemen. Okay, Mr. Wagner.
Good morning. So give me the other presentation, please. That one is Mike's. I'll be reading enough. I don't want to read all of fine print. My name is Derek Wagner, back again 30 days later for our actual proposal for Woodland Station. Slide, please. So today we're going to be submitting a formal offer to purchase the remaining 6.3 acres known as Woodland Station. This offer will have protections built in for the DDA, such as timelines for project completions, which was a concern for some of the members of the DDA, should they enter into a contract with any developer. Again, the main location of the item in hand is outlined in red, the 6.3 acres. You can see the other outlying parcels of land surrounding this particular parcel. And the ownership team right now, myself and my wife, Mark and Mary Jean Weaver, Marion Allen Sikowski, and Chef Victor and Rihanna Matthews of Green Mountain Falls, all locals up here in town.
Derek, a question. Are any of your
Sorry.
other members present?
Let's see, well, I'm members of which team? Ownership or development?
Ownership team.
Ownership team, well, my wife's here, Mark Weaver's here behind me. One of my other partners in another portion of this presentation, Tyler Gordon, sitting back there, but that's a different part of the plan. Let's see, Mary and Alan are in Hawaii right now, and Chef Victor's teaching this morning at the culinary school.
Thank you.
As far as our consultant team, obviously David Maharis, he's my civil engineer and has been for different projects throughout this town as well as Colorado Springs. Ray Thomas, who will be our GC in the project, John Steiner, the attorney, and Graham Clout, CPA down in the Springs, who has done other projects with Chef Victor. Next, please. So we have Tava House Echo Architecture. You've met my architect a few times. David Weekly Homes, their local division down in the Springs, and TBK Bank. My banker's in Georgia on vacation right now too, so he's not here.
Does everybody remember we introduced a lot of that team? Everybody remembers that?
Last month, I recall seeing your entire ownership team and the entire team that you just listed.
Yeah, I'm sort of just recapping from the last meeting, not getting into details. I thought we did that last time, but you want to back that up one slide, please. Again, just to recap, Ryan Lloyd, architect, Dustin Nelson, division president of David Weekly Homes, who was here, Preston Wood. He flew up from Houston for that last meeting. Justin and Sheena, I don't think they're on remotely today. And again, Vincent Friends with TBK, he's on vacation today, but maybe watching. Next, just to recap on David Weekly Homes. Next slide. Essentially largest home builder in the country. They're waiting and anticipating getting involved with what we want to pursue here. And for the next slide, don't get wedded to this layout. This is just how the involvement for David Weekly would be in the DDA Woodland Station portion, should we be awarded ownership and being able to guide the direction of where we want to take Woodland Station. If you can note the upper green quadrant there with Tava House in it, green space living. Obviously, there are some discussions going on with Mr. Weatherford and David Weekly, but again, for my purpose, because of that portion that is currently Woodland Station, that's all I really can comment on as to what the involvement would be with the other parcels. So next, please. And again, just to update people, Tava House, again, we've got essentially a fine dining steakhouse where we're aging our own beef, tap house, self-serve, culinary school, Paragon Culinary School, and an event center, just at the upper portion, most northern portion of Woodland Station, butting up against 24. Again, the 2019 renderings of Woodland Station, we were here 3 years ago. And then the next slide is going to be showing the designs for the other location that we had purchased over in Paradise Circle, but it's just to give you an idea of concept. There's nothing in concrete here. One of the other additional components which I want to bring to Woodland Station is the Forge Bouldering Gym. Right now, we own land where we're planning on building that bouldering gym in the old Gorman auction house. However, we are strongly considering, should we get a hold of Woodland Station to bring the Forge Bouldering over there in conjunction with Tava House, just to create a bigger and better anchor for a town center. And the next slide can show you the actual interior of the bouldering section of this climbing gym. That I already own. They're in steel containers. We're just looking for a building to put it in now, and hopefully it's going to be over at Woodland Station. So right now we've got, that's about $500,000 in materials, of boulders and flooring and handholds. Again, we already own the other piece of property, but we would strongly consider bringing it over just to complete the commercial aspect. And I don't want to say complete the commercial aspect of Woodland Station, that we're still probably only about 85%. What yet can be fit in there? Don't know, but a couple of the ideas that we're throwing around, next slide, is a beer garden, again, for a gathering place and town center, if you will. Maybe even, next slide, another coffee shop, who knows, it's still up in the air, waiting for some other ideas from the community of what they may want to see in there. So finally, the offer from Tava House, next slide. Pay in cash, $800,000 for the 6.3 acres, close on or before August 31st. And during that time before closing, a disposition development agreement to be finalized between Tava House and the DDA before closing. We have the template for the Woodland Hardware disposition and development agreement to use as a base point to start off with. And keeping it short and simple, that's about it. Maybe save questions till after the other presentation, just till we see what.
Sure.
That's up to you.
I think that's a good idea. Let's go ahead and hear the next presentation, then we'll invite questions to both parties and kind of go back and forth. Okay, thank you, Mr. Wagner.
Thank you.
Dave, can you present it as, there you go.
Let's see, this is 60 days after we last met, I believe. So thank you for the opportunity to give us, just to be able to entertain us as the organization to develop the unique gift that you guys have been entrusted to and to be the stewards of. And so we're very honored to have that opportunity. Start with that. Let's go to the first slide. The items I'm going to cover today, I want to just do a quick recap since the May 3rd meeting that we had with the DDA. So I'm going to do a quick where we came from there. Because of the change of scope and different things, I'm going to reintroduce our team again, because I think that team is really taking shape. It's a strong team, and I want to make sure that this group has a good understanding of that team. And some of the individuals, I don't think were a part of this group when we first presented back in January. So I'd like to be able to reintroduce part of that team. And then we'll talk about that group a little more. So Stantec, Jordan Block from Stantec will present their portion and what they're going to be responsible for. JLG Architects, Dave Diamond will be presenting that. Both of those gentlemen are online today. Why this approach and team, I'm going to go over that, the roadmap and the next step. One of the things I would like for the board to really pay close attention to in this presentation is it's a very, very different approach that we're looking to bring to the table for this group. And I believe it's an approach that if you go to the finest town centers across the country, those that have used this approach have truly created what I call an experience, an invitation to be able to come into the downtown centers. And it's not necessarily about going to a particular restaurant or a particular coffee house, but it's really about coming to the community and being a part of the community. So, and hopefully I do a good job of articulating that over the next few slides. Next slide. Recap the May 3rd meeting. I took away 3 things out of that. One, when we came to that meeting, we weren't sure how much support the DDA would even have to be able to do what I call a diverse set of housing options. Okay, so we had introduced the possibility of 2 or 3 story townhomes and or condo type setups. And I really felt like at that meeting, it gave us the freedom to be able to really push the envelope in terms of mixed use, retail, housing, and that type of thing. And it felt like this board was willing to be more aggressive than they were in the past. And that gave our teams the freedom to be able to go at this project from a different angle. Also at that meeting, the board, and I think it was you, Tony, that brought it up, that said, you know, maybe we should put a pause before giving another exclusive to your group and see if we can open this up to other groups. And I think that was great for the Tava House group to be able to come and present. And that way you guys are being good stewards. Are we opening up to giving alternative options to the community? So I think that was a good move on the DDA's part. It also bought us some time to be able to take a look at this project a little bit more and put together the complete team based upon where the scope of work was headed. So ForgeWorks agreed, and one of the things we agreed to is that we would return on July 5th with the purchase agreement. And we will offer that to you guys today. We have a letter of intent with a purchase agreement, and we'll hand that out at the end of the meeting today. That hopefully you guys will be pleased with. Work completed since May 3rd. We entered into discussion with Arden Weatherford. We've had multiple meetings with Arden. Sorry, I like to talk in first names. Maybe that's wrong, but that's my approach. Arden, we've had good meetings, and as of Friday last week, we had verbal agreement where we agreed to on price, we agreed to on terms, at least a framework for those 2 things. And I feel very comfortable that we were able to finally graft in the properties that Arden is responsible for. Okay, and one of the things that Arden had shared with me is a frustration that he had in the past is people were drawing on his properties without any agreement. And so before we present today, and we will present, I asked for Arden's permission if we have the freedom to do that without being disrespectful to him. And he said yes. So he gave us the permission to expand our bubble drawings, if you want to call them that. We also met with the Tava House group. We heard a question from the DDA at the June meeting that said, hey, would you guys consider working with the Tava House? Or would the Tava House consider working with ForgeWorks? We took that as an opportunity to reach out to Derek and Mark. Again, apologize for the first names. I prefer to do that, but reached out to Derek and Mark. We had some great conversations, wonderful gentlemen. And at the end of those conversations, Derek sent me a very nice email and said, hey, you know, I think at this point we have a handshake agreement with David Weekly. And with that handshake agreement, we feel like we're at a stage where we need to stay that course until we're told different. However, at the end of his email, he made a statement, and Derek, please correct me if I'm wrong. He said, if the opportunity presents itself, we would certainly love the opportunity to work with ForgeWorks in the future if it presents itself. I took a little liberty with that statement, and in my presentation, we actually grafted the Tava House into our presentation as one of our options, and I hope that's okay. And so we did graft the Tava House based on that statement into our presentation. You'll see that later on as JLG presents the bubble charts that we put together. In Gainesville, Stantec, and JLG, at the previous, I didn't feel like we had a big enough project for JLG to be on board. And you'll understand when I get deeper into who JLG is. And we're very fortunate to be able to have them at the table to be a part of this team. I believe we've cobbled together enough property now that we have over 10 acres, almost 11 acres that we are able to work with. And with that, JLG says, hey, this is a big enough project that it makes sense for us to be a part of it. We've also secured funding for the next phase of development. And then we've developed purchase agreements for DDA and Mr. Weatherford. Next slide. The team, a little bit about ForgeWorks. ForgeWorks was founded roughly 5 years ago by Kern White and Stephen Hostetler. Both gentlemen are very successful, have had very successful past. Stephen Hostetler still today owns one of the largest agricultural construction companies throughout the Midwest. And these gentlemen, they built ForgeWorks on some principles built around integrity, transparency, wanting to see transformation of individuals and communities, and the heartbeat of those two gentlemen is, I think, the same heartbeat as Woodland Park. Myself, you've gotten to know me over the last 3 meetings. Alan Brown is on the phone today. I believe he is on the phone today. And he acts as our general counsel. We also do projects together. Alan Brown is also a part of the Mariah Group. The Mariah Group out of Fort Worth, Texas, they have over $1 billion worth of real estate development across the country. They're very good at what they do, and we're fortunate to have Alan Brown as a part of our team. And he should be available for any questions later on if they relate to legal, and we can go into that. These types of projects, Alan is seasoned in, and then the Mariah Group, for those that don't know the Mariah Group, they're a family fund that basically funds projects like these. Jeremy is our president of our ForgeWorks Construction. So ForgeWorks also has a construction arm to what we do. We have our own construction crews. We have everything from excavation to landscaping to vertical, and we have the capability to build. I don't know that we're the right team to build this because we don't know exactly what we're building yet. We'll get into that later. Stantec. Who on the board is familiar with who Stantec is? At one hand. Stantec is an 800-pound gorilla, and they're the best in the world at what they do. They have 26,000 employees. They have disciplines, and we're going to leverage Stantec, and we have a statement of work with Stantec already to start work immediately upon the signing of a purchase agreement with the DDA. Well, we're going to leverage Stantec is we're going to leverage them in the case of civil, traffic, environmental studies. What else am I missing? So those are the three big ones that we're going to leverage, and zoning and permitting. Okay. Those 4 elements, I believe, are some of the biggest elements of why this property isn't developed yet. And it's one of the highest risk areas that we believe we've already de-risked those. So we're willing to step into the next phase and certainly willing to do that. And we want the best in the world at being able to address those things. So what I want to do is, can you click on the Mile High Greyhound Park development link? I'm going to take 3 minutes. This is Commerce City. We'll see if we can get to that. Why don't you hand out the Stantec slides, or the first one? And then you can hand out the, yeah, miss that one. We'll come back. Yep, Mile High too. We'll see if we're able to pull up the Mile High. So Jordan Block and Charles Cawthorn and Lisa Monroe Morey are the 3 individuals you heard from Lisa last meeting.
Why
So
doesn't every home in the US have solar panels?
let's listen to
The
this real
reason is not
quick.
about sunlight or weather or even politics.
Skip that.
It's actually just because most people don't know about the new Biden policy that allows homeowners to get paid to install the newest solar technology. People just assume they have to spend thousands of dollars to buy the panels, thousands.
My name is Jasmine Leva. We moved in here January 1st. We got to see the house being built from nothing to the framing and everything. I fell in love with the house because I thought this is the most for my money. This is the most in every area. It's so spacious. And you might not appreciate that when you pass by unless you walk into one of these houses. It literally has everything you might need. Being close to our church, which is just right across the street, being close to my grocery store where I go shopping, it's really convenient. It's very accessible to go and come from places from this location, and we are just loving it.
It's revamping the whole Commerce City area for the residents. We have some residents here that are actually from down the street that they're selling their home and buying here. So it's more affordable for people who are looking near Denver, and they just buy here and be in Denver in 5 minutes.
We always recognize this is an area where there's a lot of drive-by traffic, and that the dog track previously was a big economic driver. And we always kind of had that over our head saying, how do we make sure that we create an economic engine here long-term in Commerce City, but also respect the need for an integrated community with a lot of different housing options. So we're very proud that we're able to find the whole spectrum of housing.
You see things from the ground up, just a huge community that's coming together and just seeing everybody's faces when they walk in, saying how great the houses are. It's very exciting.
The energy efficient appliance and everything that's in this house is amazing. And I feel like I'm very proud Commerce City resident because that's what we need. Commerce City is a beautiful place. So it's amazing to see it all come together from scratch, from just a drawing to actually living in that awesome project. That's why I bought a house here, because I could see the finished product and I just knew that's where I wanted to live.
So that handout that I gave you is the work that Stantec had put together.
Struggle to lose weight.
After the 4th of July weekend, yes. So are the drawings they put together and the work that they did on the front side. While this isn't Commerce City, this is a small mountain town community. A lot of the same attributes exist. Okay, former dog track, former rodeo arena, land that's available that was once highly used here in Woodland Park, the dog track highly used in Commerce City. Looking to develop this with a lot of different components. And Stantec and JLG, but Stantec does an excellent job at being able to take raw pieces of land like this and turn it into a world-class experience. I'm going to turn it over to Jordan now, and he's going to walk through how they're going to tackle some of the biggest aspects of this property. And also, and I think you can stay in the same slide deck as long as you can enable the audio for Jordan. And then Charles is also here today, and Charles is going to share some. Charles has extensive experience in Woodland Park, so he's familiar with the permitting and zoning. He's done multiple developments up here already, and we're fortunate to have Charles here today and also a part of this team. So Jordan, with that, Jordan, I'll turn it over to you. Next slide.
Yes, good morning. Hopefully everyone's able to hear me. Is that the case?
Yep.
Yes, we can.
Excellent. Well, I want to thank you all this morning for letting us speak. Thanks to the board, thanks to the community. I won't go over everything that Chad has said already, but I want to give a little bit of a background on who Stantec is and how we see ourselves as being beneficial to your community and to the project itself. As Chad mentioned, we are a very large company of 26,000 people, but that's not how we see ourselves. We see ourselves as local first because we really are local first. We have 500 people across Colorado, and that's how we act. We know Colorado, we know the places, we know the people, and we love the place. We have offices across the Front Range, Colorado Springs, Denver, Fort Collins, Boulder, and Broomfield. And I believe Charles Cawthorn's in the room with you today, so he'll speak just a bit later, but he's based out of Colorado Springs. We do augment our sort of our local attitude and the way we approach our projects in Colorado with the fact that we do have this backing of sort of near infinite resources to help projects like this go forward quickly and efficiently. That's the way we like to operate. We always want to make sure that the people who work on projects know the place, know the people, and understand the context, but we also want to make the community and everyone else aware that when issues arise, as they can always do on projects like this, we have the people, both in terms of depth, just simply number of resources we can put on a project, as well as depth, sort of disciplinary depth that we can bring to a project if something unknown comes up, and that could be a number of things. We can generally handle it, but we really are true to our values. What we say right on the front of our website is true. We design with community in mind. To what that means to us is that the project's not a project, right? It's building a community. It's improving a place that people live and people love. We take that responsibility very seriously. We also take sustainability very seriously, and that means a lot of different things in a lot of different places, but we are consistently ranked as the most sustainable design firm in North America and one of the most sustainable in the world, and we try to bring those values everywhere we go with us. Go to the next slide, please. So as I mentioned, we have that disciplinary depth and breadth, and I always like to say that we're not just multidisciplinary. We don't just have a lot of disciplines. We know how to use them together. We're interdisciplinary. And for the sake of this project, as Chad mentioned, some of the disciplines we are going to be bringing to the table are urban design and planning skill set. I personally am the urban design lead for the company, but based in Denver, Colorado, and will be very involved in this process and project with the team. Landscape architectural, civil engineering, civil engineering, zoning and permitting, as Chad mentioned, traffic and transportation. We know that there's some concerns and potential issues with what the project like this can mean to the sort of the systems that are all in place, your roads and your streets and your signals, and we're going to help with that. Similar with the drainage, so our water services and engineering and how we plan on helping there. But again, what we want to drive home here is that we can do all of this and we know how to do it together, and what that means for you, for the board, and for Chad and his team is that we're able to do it not only quickly, which we know is a driver of this project, but that by doing it quickly does not diminish the quality, because we are really great at working together and we love to do that. That does not only include working amongst our internal disciplines, but working with JLG as well and any other project partners. And again, anything that might come up in the project, we can handle. And those things might be unforeseen at this point, but we are never taken totally by surprise. So we look forward to kind of pushing this forward and making sure that it runs smoothly for everyone involved. Next slide, please. You just saw the video of the project on screen. This is Mile High Greyhound Park. It is one of countless design and planning projects that we've done across the country, the world, continent. And one thing that holds all the projects for us together, and especially the ones that I take particular pride of ownership in, including this one. I was day-to-day lead on this project through the master planning, design, and rezoning and permitting process. But all the projects we work on, we want to make sure that they're community owned. And by that, I mean that the community is reflected in the decisions. They have a sense of ownership over it because it matters to them. And we do a project that meets their goals, your goals, as well as that of our clients. We want to make sure it's connected to context. We don't just put spaceships in the middle of towns. We make sure that the projects we design reflect the place and the people. All our projects have in common that they're walkable and vibrant. And the phrase I like to use is people first, people centered, that everything else doesn't matter if you don't create a good, comfortable place for people to exist, to live, to walk, to enjoy the restaurants and shops and connect to their community. And then what we kind of generally refer to as that triple bottom line, right? Projects we work on are financially sustainable, not only for our clients, but for the communities they're in. They're environmentally sustainable to the degree we're able to work, which is very important to us, and then socially sustainable, that they build the community and make the community stronger as a result of having them. And then last slide, as you saw, we don't just create visions. That's important to us, create a vision that's owned by everyone, to create something that really elevates the community and speaks to the aspirations of the community and the people within it. We also get things built. That's what it's all about. A great vision is only as good as your ability to build it, and we're very focused on doing that on all our projects, and especially on a project like this where that's so critical. So I'll pass it over. Charles, are you in the room? I would like, if Charles is, he was going to speak about some of the projects he's worked on in your community itself.
Good morning. I'm Charles Cawthorn, a registered professional engineer in Colorado. Located in Colorado Springs, I have about 35 years of experience in Teller County, El Paso County, doing land development projects. In Teller County, Woodland Park area, I worked on the Shining Mountain Golf Course, engineer record for the redesign of the entrance off of Highway 67. So I've worked with CDOT with those type of design efforts. Also we did a lot of floodplain mapping with Corps of Engineers through the Shining Mountain Golf Course, and worked through some of the rezoning of some of the properties and modifications of the plans from the hotel to kind of what's out there now. And as that project moves forward, haven't done any recent work up there, but was involved with a lot of the original or modifications that are being developed right now. Also, name dropping, I worked with Mark and Debbie Littlestar back in the day. I assume a lot of you guys remember those names. Worked on the Gray Horse Ranch project, which I think was a nice addition to the city of Woodland Park. Prior to that, or in about the same time frame, I was involved with the streetscape design on Highway 24 going through town, particularly the section right in front of the old train station and the amphitheater park, that area through there. Also worked on Paradise Ranch project a little east of town. So pretty familiar with the area. Look forward to working up here again. So thank you.
So Stantec is certainly, I think, clears the path for this project to be shovel ready in 2023. And that strength of a partner is one that I don't believe this committee has somebody at the table before. And we feel very fortunate. We do have a trusted relationship with Stantec. We've worked with them. JLG, who I'm going to introduce you to here in a second, they work hand in glove with Stantec. They're currently doing an urban development as we speak, so they're in the process of that. And what I'd like to do now is switch gears and just the plan with Stantec is the only thing that's keeping them from working right now is ink on the paper. So statement of work is ready. We're ready to put ink on paper and they're ready to begin work almost immediately. So JLG architect team, this is who I want to introduce you to next. Go ahead and stay on that slide for a second. Michelle Mojan Allen is the CEO. We do certainly have a trusted relationship with this team. Michelle and I go all the way back to grade school. They are an 800-pound gorilla. These guys have a strong team, 150-person plus architectural team with the small town feel. Michelle grew up same as I did in a small country town and of 800 people. So she gets the small town environment and she's carried that into the culture of JLG. Jennifer Burke Jackson, she's a principal architect. I've been working with her on this project. She's turned this presentation over to Dave Diamond, who is the director of their design. So he's going to take over the presentation, and then just a couple other names, Brian Carlson and Jesse Hadley. They've been the ones that have been behind the scenes and doing the work and are excited to get started on this project. JLG and Stantec overlap. All right, they do some of the same things. But what we're going to do is we're going to leverage the strengths of Stantec to move the project along quickly and to get the best product. And we're going to run JLG in parallel with Stantec, with JLG taking over at the end of the conceptual design, by which they'll also be a part of with Stantec, and then they'll do the full engineering and the final designs. And both companies will be with us all the way through completion, including construction. I think it's important when you bring companies like this to the table that they stay engaged and they stay a part of the process from beginning to end. And with that being said, I'm going to turn the presentation over to Mr. Diamond.
Thanks.
Yeah, and real quick, what I'm going to do is have these guys hand out JLGs. I'm going to have them hand out JLGs, kind of their portfolio of work, and which is I would have killed way too many trees if I would have done the whole thing, but I tried to cherry pick some of the work that I thought was most relevant for this.
All right, thanks.
Chad, will you be able to provide all of these in soft copy so that we can actually post them to the website for the public?
Sure.
Thank you.
Thanks a lot, Chad. And can you let me know everyone can hear me fine?
Yes, we can hear you.
Great, thank you. I'm really happy to be here this morning with you. If you can, yeah, the slide's a great spot. I just wanted to build on Chad's comments, and thanks, Chad, for opening up for us. We're 100% employee-owned firm, an ESOP that has been around in the upper Midwest and Mountain States for 33 years. We are really proud of our record of building across the small towns and cities of this region and really helping communities to achieve their best version of themselves with financial, economic, and success for the quality of life that each of these communities is pursuing. If you want to advance the slide, please. We've received 130 design awards over our time practicing, and just in the last couple of years, we've measured 15 million of estimated energy savings across the projects that we have been designing and implementing. But one of the numbers that we're most proud of is the 1% that our design change orders are less than 1% on any project we've been doing, which industry-wide is 2.5% or greater. And so we're really happy on our ability to deliver projects, to make projects happen, not only achieve great design, but make projects happen and make them happen in a timely and orderly way that all goals are achieved. Please advance the slide. One of the projects we're especially proud of, an award we received recently from Engineering News Record that named us the Mountain Region Design Firm of the Year. And one of the projects that has been very successful for us in terms of building partnerships between Colorado College and Colorado Springs is the Ed Robeson Arena. The picture that we have up here, that is in many ways a mixed use development. And not only is it hockey, but it provides parking facilities, student center, and additional support for the community as it sits on the edge of campus adjacent to the rest of the Colorado Springs community. Please advance. And with that idea of mixed use, I want to share a few of our mixed use case studies. And if you'd advance to the next slide, one of the we've been named one of the top 100 multifamily sector giants of the industry by Building Design and Construction magazine, that our architecture for multifamily housing, mixed use, and hospitality has really built out an entire region. Feel really privileged, if you want to advance to the next slide, really privileged to be able to be involved in many of these communities in both beginning the planning phases, partnering with communities, other design partners, to establish development programs that end up with built buildings. This is Cedar Rapids development, Cedar Rapids, Iowa. And one of the things that we look for in projects is to be sure that not only are we setting out the right goals, but we're measuring the goals. And in the end, as a project is implemented, we're measuring the success to be sure that the community is hitting the goals that they aspire to meet. Next slide, please. Some of the multi-use projects that we've recently completed. This is just opening this month, the Mercantile in Fargo, North Dakota. It's a 6/1 apartment, retail, parking, and includes townhouse development, all on the main street in downtown Fargo, which is Broadway. Next slide, please. Another similar project is The Landing in downtown Fargo, which, just to show you a difference in scale, as we look at 3 levels over 1 as a retail base for this to really support. This is more on the edge of downtown, supporting the smaller scale of the adjacent communities. Next slide, please. This has been for us, again, opportunities to be engaged in many cities around the Midwest and the mountain region in mixed use construction, 16 of our projects here, but we've had the opportunity to do dozens of projects and are really proud of the track record in accomplishing those projects. If we look at the next slide, I wanted to share with you an example that is where we've partnered with Stantec on a recent development. Chad was referencing this. In the Red River Valley, where these are just examples of how we've looked at this development, which is a 15 to 20 acre development, looked at downtown redevelopment massing, where with a multiple developer team partnering with the city and with the Downtown Development Authority for this community to create pro formas for the development blocks, what buildings might be saved, what buildings might be renovated, what new construction, the idea of retail, civic, and housing uses within this development massing. We take the massing as a part of the stakeholder engagement process, if you want to go to the next slide. And then as we move forward from the massing, we started to be sure everyone was on board with where this is heading, and it matches the character of the town and the character of the development desired. We often do what we call storyboarding, bringing examples of projects we've done and other projects that might relate that we haven't done, but might relate to the community character, quality, so that everyone's on board with this is the type of development that we want to move forward. And from that as a process, going to the next slide, please, we start to take that and really work from the pro forma massing to the beginning to develop the character, the organization of the building, understanding connections out to the community, relationships to nature, just what is the overall story. And that we then continue to develop on the next slide, please, into more polished images that include everything from retail, restaurants that want to stay, new restaurant opportunities that might exist, how housing and other factors can connect, so that this visualization is to make sure, again, that as a stakeholder group with the community, everyone's on board with the direction that the project is going to take, so that when it goes into construction, it is really a consensus effort that leads it to a successful completion through construction. Looking at the next slide, wanted to highlight also, we're proud of the opportunity of some of our commercial development within small towns and communities, being able to bring to remote locations timber framing, highly sustainable construction methods. Looking at the next slide, please. Even in, and this is a connection, personal connection to Chad, just going back to the adjacent community where he grew up, 2,500 people here in Rugby, North Dakota, in the First National Bank building as an all timber, highly sustainable structure as the gateway into the town off of Highway 2 as it crisscrosses the United States. And on to the next slide, please. And last image I just wanted to show you before looking at site studies is the Farmhouse Bistro in Spearfish, South Dakota, which is a great example for us of it. It was an existing restaurant that we partnered with the owners to help them rebuild and re-envision it for the success they've been having into a greater success for the future, and really capturing the natural beauty of the Black Hills and the surrounding community of Spearfish. So as we go to the next few slides, site studies, and you can advance, thanks. The first study that we have here really reflects the idea of the 10.6 acre expanded site that Chad was talking about, that the opportunity of this site with the additional acreage is greater accessibility, greater connection into the community, and access for retail and the mixed use function. And in particular, the first two options out of 4 bubble diagrams that I have here, these first two options highlight the idea of bringing in a restaurant like the Tava House into this development. It's the dark blue squared at the top. The north half, the top half of this site is the mixed use retail with housing above. The 2 yellow boxes are 3 over or 2 over 1 housing with retail below. And then this idea that we could have a spectacular restaurant off of West Midland as the entry into the development, with townhouses to the south, on the south half of the site, surrounded by single family houses here on the site. If we take a look at the next one, please, the next slide, this says, well, what if the restaurant was more fully integrated into the main floor of the mixed use building and becomes really a significant anchor for this development, having visibility and access off of Midland and ample parking. And also by bringing it into the building as a test fit, it creates more potential for outdoor spaces, patio dining, activity spaces, or increased parking as needed. This also does housing above, with then down in the south half of the site, 26 single family houses, and then townhouse development in the center. On all of these, the stormwater is being managed as the water drains from the top left towards the bottom right naturally, where we have the most significant stormwater management to the bottom right. But we also look to make features out of stormwater management across this entire site and spread rain gardens and pools across. The next 2 slides, if you want to advance, thanks. start to highlight the ideas of if there was not a retail or if not a restaurant as part of the retail on the main floors, that creates a little more space on the north half of the site to bring perhaps some of the townhouse development up to the north half. We then continue townhouse development down into the southern half of the site. We're really using this road that cuts east to west below the hardware store and below the bank building as a potential access point that creates mixed use to the north and housing to the south. One of the things without restaurant on this site is we start to see a potential increase in housing up to with single family housing, maybe 32 plus to 36 units. And if you go to the last slide of site plans that I have here, this just looks at a different configuration on the north half of the site with mixed use, and on the south half, starting to bring together a little more compactness and character intertwining, walk paths, water, where we're able to increase the housing here to 42 to 46 units with access off of adjacent streets, private drives, really creating a really nice character that helps to support the development of this site in downtown Woodland Park. Last couple, if you'd advance, last couple of slides I wanted to speak to were about project process, and really the importance for us is to be sure as a part of the team that we are strong communicators, that we are strong collaborators, that we have respect for the knowledge, insights, expertise, experiences of all stakeholders in the project, and that we take very seriously our responsibility to be the coordinators to ensure that all goals are in alignment with your vision and expectations, and that we deliver, which again is our operational honor point, is that we deliver on our promises. And with that, Chad, why don't I pass it back to you?
Thanks, Dave. So JLG certainly brings a strength to the team, and combine those with Stantec, and for this opportunity for this community, I think we get the best design, get the most out of the real estate that we have access to. And this is a once in a lifetime opportunity for this group. Next slide. So it's a very different approach that we're looking at. And this is in no way disrespect to the Tava House Group and the work that they've done. They have a product in hand, okay? They have a product in hand and they're ready to start digging dirt and get that product into the community, okay? We're asking for a pause button, and maybe not even a pause button, I think, when we look at the end result. So we amassed a team over here that says, how do we maximize the opportunity that sits before the city of Woodland Park? Let's bring two of the finest organizations in the country. And that's not me saying that. That's some of your leading experts in the industry that are saying that, and they're publishing that these two groups are the finest groups in the industry. Okay, that's not me that's saying that. Let them do what they do best and create the best solution for this group. Go ahead and hand out. Yep, the very top. This is a project that we're doing down in Fort Worth, Texas. We're doing it for the inner city kids. It's a 150 some acre project. We've worked with them from the beginning. There's a combination of school in there. There's a combination of a school that's a part of that. There's a combination of the trades that are a part of that. And there's a combination of housing that's a part of this. We developed the master plan around this project. We developed the phases by which we'd implement. We've actually done the construction where we're doing the horizontal for phase. We've completed the horizontal for phase one. We're doing the vertical. And so this has all the same attributes as what we're talking about in downtown Woodland Park. One of the things we did with this project is, and they started before us, similar to you guys, right? Where there's been some stop and starts to developing this part of the community. And we got a phone call one day and they were stumbling. this group was stumbling and they had cobbled together some pieces, but it wasn't going well. Okay, we'll leave it at that. And so we stepped back and said, all right, what is the vision? And what is the capability? And we didn't come with who are the trades going to be, who are we going to bring to the table? We said trades are a part of the program. And we developed the designs for that. Today, as I stand here, we have the top corporations in the country asking to be a part of that program. We didn't have to go out and sell them. We didn't have to go out and try to get them to come up and be a part of the team. We had built the best design that we possibly could with the master plan. And now we got some of the top equipment manufacturers in the country, heavy equipment manufacturers wanting to be on board so that these inner city kids will have the opportunity to be able to participate and learn that trade. And then we've got other trades beyond that that are also asking to be a part of it too. And so that's kind of the difference. Are we a product that we're ready to put in, or are we making sure that we're stepping back and we're developing the right solution and we're maximizing the opportunity that sits before you? I put a statement in here. It might be a bit arrogant, and those that know me, I'd like to throw these statements out there, not to be disrespectful, but to freeze us real quick and to say, hey, let's think about what we're doing. And the statement I put in here, Woodland Park doesn't need another coffee shop, or it doesn't need another housing development. And especially with this piece of land that's right in the heart of downtown, which you get one opportunity. This isn't on the edge of town, where if you get it wrong, you can move another ranch down the road by it and get it developed, right? No, this is one chance. And what Woodland Park needs, in my opinion, is an open invitation to experience Woodland Park. And Woodland Park has a lot of great attributes. And I think this is the opportunity to complete that tapestry, to complete that picture for downtown Woodland Park. So what does that invitation look like for the out-of-town person that's coming from Colorado Springs or that's flying into the airport that's going to spend a few days in the region? Is there a calling card up here that's inviting those individuals to come up to Woodland Park and spend the morning, spend the afternoon, spend the evening, or spend the whole day? As I spoke with some of the business owners in town, the question I've asked is, so if we put another vodka house or some type of another beer garden or another type of a whiskey bar as a part of this, or we put another restaurant, do you view that as competition? And the answer that I got to that was no, in some cases. And the reason is, if we do it right and we do the development of that area right, we're going to add more people in downtown. But in addition to that, we're going to create the right environment in terms of invitations to come up, that I spend my mornings at one end of town and my afternoons in another part of town, with my evenings in another part of the town. And the person that's passing through town, do we make it easy for them to pull off and stop? When they're coming through town, do they see a vibrant, active downtown community here that says, man, what's happening in Woodland Park that I want to stay? I want to drag my fifth wheel off to the side. Maybe we don't want the fifth wheels off the side, but I'm going to stop and I'm going to enjoy part of Woodland Park as I'm coming through. Existing residents living in Woodland Park, do we have enough diversity in downtown Woodland Park that they're not running down to Colorado Springs for their day, but they're keeping their resources up in Woodland Park, and they want to spend more time in the downtown region? Existing business owners, new business owners, how do we attract the best business owners to be a part of the mixed use? Tava House, how do they become a part of that tapestry? Assuming they're the right and they want to be a part of that fabric. Okay. Integrated community with options. So how do we integrate? How do we have traffic patterns that are such that make it easy? In some of the other businesses that I own, one of the things that we discuss all the time is, are we easy to do business with? Is downtown Woodland Park easy to do business with? Is it easy to be a part of the community? Is it inviting to be a part of the community? JLG and Stantec are world-class at pulling stakeholders together within the community and to be able to create that environment. Speed, I know, is a concern. I know there's a lot of pressure on the DDA to act. There's a lot of pressure from the community. There's a lot of pressure in here. There's a lot of pressure from the city. When you hear this, I think there's some people that will take a look at it, man, this is going to slow us down. I don't think so. I think it actually speeds us up. And we'll talk about that in a little bit. Quality, certainly you get the quality aspect of it. And then a complete solution, and we'll go on from there. Next slide. So here's the roadmap we have. Signed purchase agreements. Let's get them signed and let's unleash the resources we need. There's been some people who have said, you know, gosh, Fort George hasn't put any money in. I don't know, we put close to 100 grand in so far. It might be time, but we certainly have made a significant effort in going forward. But we're prepared for the next level, which is involving JLG and Stantec and you know, so let's sign purchase agreements so that we can pull those folks in. Let's get the project kicked off. Let's get stakeholders involved. Let's figure out who all the stakeholders are that are on the table. And let's get this thing moved. Let's get the site planning starting. Let's get zoning, traffic work, utilities, environmental studies, concept designs. Let's get that. And these guys move very quick. You know, Stantec, and they've got, like they said, they got a deep bench, and they got breadth and depth in their benches. Q1, we looked at finalized design, marketing materials. You've seen some of the marketing materials did early. I think it's going to be important for us and for this group to have marketing materials. So we'll have videos, we'll have slides, we'll have all the things we need to bring to the community. We'll finalize the purchase with the DDA. This is not an offer to purchase this property in August. There's too many risks that are out there. We've de-risked it a bunch. We feel we can handle the civil. So we've had our construction crews up here already. We've had the guys that, I don't know if this is the right statement, that love to roll coal. They love to dig dirt. They love dozers and equipment. We've had them on site. Okay. So they believe they know what they can do. They think they know what the property is capable of. We've had builders on site, guys that are GCs on site, and everybody's excited to get started, but we need to know what we're getting started on. And then Q2, Q3, shovel ready. All right. This is where the architectural designs are complete. We've worked well with the city from beginning through this whole process. We've got guys like Charles that know the city, that we're able to not only have our engineering designs and we understand zoning, but we've got permits in hand, shovels in hand, and we're ready to get started. So next slide. Immediate next steps, DDA board approval. You know, that's kind of the place that we're at. And I don't know if that approval is today. I don't know if there needs to be 30 days or you got a different direction for both of us as groups, but that's what we're looking for. Alan Brown is ready and prepared. Go ahead and hand out the letter of intent. Do the first one first. So here's the letter of intent in the offer for the DDA. The purchase price that we're looking on for the property is we're offering $200,000 for that. In addition to that is 1.8 million that we would set aside to relieve any stress for the city. Can I have one of those too? I'll make sure I don't miss. So we believe this project is going to bring some stress to Colorado Spring or Colorado to Woodland Park on the front side of it. Okay, I think we're going to stress the traffic. I think we're going to stress the utilities. I think we're going to stress different elements of the project. So what we're saying up front is we're going to set aside $1.8 million to address address the stress that we're going to place on the city of Colorado Springs. Okay. And what that, or city of Woodland Park, I apologize, guys. And at the end of the day, that's a $2 million offer that we're looking to purchase the property for, the 6.3 acres. Okay. There's a lot of details in that need to be worked out. And there's a number of things that are unknown, I think, on both parties. And I think it's important that we understand that. Our goal is to come and build the finest downtown area, addition to the downtown area in Woodland Park that can possibly be built. And we want to do that in such a way that also minimizes the impact on the city and what they're doing and the residents, so that we can get to a finished product. And then we hold stakeholder meetings and begin the execution of the roadmap. That's the bottom line. Alan Brown is ready to get started in working with the DDA's attorney and working out those fine details. And then also as a part of that purchase agreement, we would look to close on the actual purchase of it in January of 2023. What this does is it gives the DDA some room in there that if you decide you don't like the direction that we're headed with the final design, in theory, you could still pull the plug on it. I think we got tentative agreement in the direction, and I don't think we're going to change that. But if for some reason we were not performing, or some reason we were not, we had too many colors in the housing, I don't know what it would be, but which we shouldn't do, because you guys would certainly be a part of the stakeholders. So with that being said, I think I'm opening it up for questions.
Thank you, Chad. I will use your first name. Does anyone want a quick break? Okay, so let's take a break until 9. So it's a 7-minute break to take care of things. Thank you. I think, Chad, when we come back, we'll ask questions of you first, then we'll come back and ask questions of the Tava group to kind of stay consistent with the order.
Yep. And Dave and Jordan, if you guys could stay online.
There we go. Thank you. Okay, we'll reconvene, and I indicated before the break that we would direct initial questions to Chad and then to Derek in that order, to kind of go in reverse of how it was presented. Is the board prepared to ask some questions?
Yes.
Maybe. Okay, come on up, Chad. I did write down some questions, but I'll let, let's start with Matt. Do you have any questions?
Right this moment.
This moment? Gotcha.
I don't have any at this moment, but I think it's an awful lot of information that both of you guys presented, and I wouldn't be comfortable with making a decision today, I can say that. But I think it's awesome. I think it's great that you guys have come to the table and brought this forward. I really appreciate it.
Yeah, I too certainly feel that there's a huge amount of information and thought process that need to go on to digest this and to come back with more educated type thoughts as you develop and mature in this. So I'm not ready for a decision today.
Jerry?
Well, I was looking through some of my notes last night, and I came across section chapter 18.31.030 of the Woodland Station Overlay District, which I understand is still in effect, is it not?
Correct.
Well, and I'm not saying this is, means everything. I just like to get people's opinion. And that it's saying that buildings and structures and land within the Woodland Overlay District may be used for residential dwelling units, provided such the residential dwelling units are located on the upper floors of mixed-use buildings of commercial. So I don't know how the board feels about that, what the legal ramifications of this is, or if either project presentation would, if it would be over if they just purchased the land, if that's even a possibility. I don't know. So I'm looking for expert opinion there, but
would you like a comment on that from our side, or?
Sure.
So we are aware of that. And obviously if we switched, if some of the housing and stuff that we have in there, we'd have to go for a variance to that. And I'm sure there's a process by which we would go after that. I've had people tell me, well, that shouldn't be a problem. I don't know if it is or isn't a problem. What I do know is we'll bring the best in the business that have done some of that work already in Stantec. Charles in particular has worked with variances within the community. I don't know if you want to speak to that at all. And it's just a process that would have to be gone through. And I think that's the other thing on the front side of this, why it's important that we stick to the process that I had presented earlier. And we're prepared to adjust. So if we have to stay with mixed use in its entirety throughout the 6.3 acres, then we would stay with that. So we would adjust our final design.
That's good, thank you. And then, so your offer of 200,000 and then 1,800,000, you're adding that up to $2 million is what you're saying.
Correct.
So, but the 1,800,000 is actually towards your development. It's not towards the purchase of the land.
So the concept behind that is whoever develops here is going to, on the front side, put some stress on the city, right? And there's going to have to be some investments in order to make that. And I don't know what the answer to that is yet. That's why the principle of it is to create a fund, a $1.8 million fund, by which the city and the DDA would direct how that money is invested into the infrastructure.
So you would release those funds then, right, to the discretion of the city and DDA, is that?
Correct. And it's the one part that in the purchase agreement, which I do have the purchase agreement, I can, and if you want to hand that out, you can to those guys. It's not in the purchase agreement because I think DDA is legal. I think the city should have a voice in it too, and wrap that around the language of how the 1.8 million would be utilized. Yeah. And I've heard in the past, and I don't know if this is the right place to bring it up, but since I started, and I don't know the truth of this, but I have heard it from a couple of different people that in the past, there's been sections of the property bought for X amount of dollars. and I'll use arbitrary numbers, that they bought the land for $2. It was certainly significantly more than that, arbitrary numbers. But then the DDA turned around and spent $10 to prepare the ground. So I think what I'm trying to do with the letter of intent is say, hey, we're coming to the table with capital to provide that relief on the community and on the infrastructure of the city. And we're coming out of the gate with that. We're not asking the city to carry that initial burden. In addition to that, I think we also, in terms of taxes, we're not asking for any special tax relief on the front side. And again, I think it's premature, and that's why we don't have the closing until January 31st. If the performance come back and CDOT tells us one thing, and we were expecting another, all right, then, and we still want the project to go forward, but we can't carry all the burden. We're certainly upfront demonstrating that we would. And reports I've read in the past of the traffic studies say that, hey, I think we're right in the ballpark of where we need to be. Okay. But those studies were also done 10 years ago, guys. And to be honest with you, those studies were a bit shallow.
Okay, now I've got another question then directed to Mr. Wagner. And
we're gonna question them next.
oh, okay.
If you can hold.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Tony,
Thank you,
can I
Jim.
have something on this?
Yeah, go ahead, John.
So, so when you say initial and front, so you're saying in the end, you may come after the city of Woodland Park for some infrastructure. Is that when you say that, it sounds shady is the wrong word, but it's just like leaving it out there. Like, no, we may come back and ask for this. We may have to ask for that. So can you be a little bit more forthright with what that really means instead of kind of burying it in those two words?
Yeah, back in January, I think one of the things that I had stated there is we want to be transparent up front. We want to operate with integrity at all times. I think we've done that in terms of, and at every level, we've done that as a part of ForgeWorks. Okay. I talked about earlier, Kern and Haas, who are the founders of ForgeWorks. The integrity of those two gentlemen bleed through everything that we do with every project that we do. Okay. So our intent with the $2 million up front is to come out of the gate saying, hey, we want to relieve that burden from the city and the stress that's going to be placed on the city. And I think we'll carry that all the way through. Now, arbitrary numbers again, right? We come up with a design that is a design that we can all agree to in this room. All of us in this room can agree to. That would transform the downtown section of Woodland Station and Woodland Park. Yet it comes with a price tag coming from CDOT of, again, arbitrary numbers, $20 million to redo the streets and the lighting and fill in the blank, whatever it is. And I got to look at the pro forma of that and say, I can't solve that on my own. Okay, I can't solve that on my own as ForgeWorks is a part of Woodland Station, nor do I think the Tava House can. I got a pretty good idea because our family owns restaurants. We own bars, we own hotels, we own a cacophony of businesses. And I'm quite confident in saying that the Tava House on itself would have a hard time carrying that burden. So at that point, if we're all in this room, and maybe I'm wrong in that, am I fair in that statement? Maybe it's, yeah, it's the principle
We'll let him
of that.
speak for himself on that.
Yeah, it's the principle of that. And then it's about together we're better, right? And then it's coming back to the table and say, all right, and maybe CDOT's at the table too, right? And saying, how do we solve this problem? We'll certainly do everything we can, and that's our demonstration on the front side of this.
Okay, Rusty?
Thank you, Chairman Perry. I actually have, I'm going to try to ask the exact same question to both projects. And I'm going to break my comments into kind of two different groupings. The first one is some questions that I think the citizens may want asked to fill in some of the dots on your presentation. So they're very simple questions, but keep in mind, this is for the citizens that may be monitoring or in the future may see the literature that you've handed out. You were talking about having individual lots for the housing on some of your options. Would those be sold individually, the lots with the building or the building? Just to answer anybody that might be watching this.
Good question. The anticipation would be we would have some diversity in there where we would sell some, and then we'd also hold others for rent. So we create again, a diverse housing option. Also, I'd want to say a bit premature. So I think that's the intent. So the idea of mixed use, the idea of townhomes, the idea of that, the idea of retail, restaurant. I think we can all be in agreement it's going to be some form of that. And so, yeah, diverse housing options.
And that's fine. I just wanted anybody that's monitoring could hear your answer to that. And remember, I'm a city council liaison, so I kind of wear a little bit of a different, our responsibility by our charter is to the businesses, whereas a council member, it's to the citizens. That's why my are more citizen focused. One of the things that have come up to the council members is attainable versus affordable. And a lot of feedback to the council is, are you really talking about when you say affordable or attainable? Because they are slightly different, and Karen can probably go into some depth off the cuff on the differences, but can you talk to whether you are thinking of subsidized versus non-subsidized housing? Because that is the worry of a lot of the citizens. Your view on that?
Oh, that's a loaded question. I don't know the answer to that question yet. I do think the housing, certainly, again, a diverse set of housing options, affordable, again, wide open for definition. I think the affordable comes in, housing above a retail is oftentimes more affordable than, say, a single family home. So how do you have stepping stones through that? Now you get to downtown Denver, it's a different story. But in this case, I believe that housing is certainly going to be more affordable than the single family housing. So again, a diverse set of housing options is what we're looking for. Subsidized, I don't know.
I think that's the word that gets a lot of people very concerned when they hear about subsidized and taxpayers taking on that burden. Thank you. That kind of represents the couple questions I had for the citizens. Now I'm going to try to put on a hat as a city council liaison, because I know we got Robert here in the audience and Kelly is listening. I do want to read a sentence out of the disposition and development agreement for all board members, so that as we go through this process, because it is a little confusing, what are the next steps? This is in the disposition and development agreement. This would be the second amendment in its paragraph 3.03, where the review of developers' agreements. All developer agreements shall be subject to review and approval for compliance with all city requirements and this agreement by city council. So what that to me would mean, and maybe we would have our DDA attorney weigh in to confirm or refute that we would have an approval process, and then whatever we do or decide, we would actually have to then present it to the city council for the city council's attorney to review the legal documents and then advise council to approve or disapprove our actions based on what the DDA attorney has offered up in opinions. That's my interpretation.
Yeah, I don't disagree, Rusty. And I've been sitting here kind of putting down next steps that I'll outline when I go through at the end.
Perfect.
And I think I do cover that.
Good. I just wanted to make sure that anybody watching and monitoring, it is in writing in a document. So the city council members will also have a chance to review anything we do.
Rusty, can I ask you a question?
Sure.
How does Charter 917 play into that? Where city is not allowed to offer incentives for development. So would that be under that, guys?
Well, I think the correct answer would come from our attorney. I can give you my opinion because it's simply where approval for compliance with the city requirements. The city council would not be approving any TIF incentives or things like that. That would be at the board level. That's my understanding of these words, but maybe Marcus could weigh in.
Well, let's not weigh in today.
That's
I think
fine.
let's finish the question and answer session and then get the Wagners up, and then that'll be for the next steps.
Thank you. And then I guess the last thing I was going to say is I thought the letter of intent was a little light until you just handed out the full document. So I think with some time, I agree with the other board members. I hope we don't do any voting on which project. I think we need some time to let our attorney review the documents that have been presented, hopefully from both projects, and then provide advice to us. And that would be my final comment, Tony. Thank you.
So the one, just on that real quick, in the letter of intent is the 1.8, in the PSA, the 1.8 is not in that. Because I think that's going to require some rounds between Alan Brown, your attorney, possibly even the city, in terms of how we craft the language around that. So, and to really kind of address, Tony, I think it was your question or comment you had earlier. So, and John, your comment, how would those funds be used? So I think there needs to be some language put around that we did not have time to plug in yet.
Okay, I'm going to jump in. I'm going to have a list of questions for both of you and some seniorly based on your presentations. First is you mentioned that you want to get to quarter Q1 23 to execute agreements because you first made the statement that you're pretty sure that you have a handle on all the environmental risks, the build risk, the property risk, those kind of things, but you didn't identify the other risk that are holding you up from executing an agreement sooner. Can you shed some light on that?
Well, I think it's so pro forma is a pretty big part of ours. And so those risks, while we think they're solvable, we don't have a number to put in yet. So traffic was one, that's a fairly environmental. I've heard both sides of this one still. That is certainly a risk for all of that property down there. And until we have the right people doing the environmental study on it, that are doing a thorough report on it, I think it's premature for us to move forward. Again, that could be another one of those that has an extremely high dollar amount associated with it. Let's hope not, right? And then, so traffic, environmental, zoning and permitting. And you guys brought it up just a little bit ago that, you know, the way the zoning currently reads is we have to have 100% what we have in some sort of a mixed use or full retail kind of setting within that tapestry. I don't think in in evaluating that is the best use of that property. Okay. I think it's in order to create that experience that I'm talking about, we need more diversity than what the zoning currently allows. So we have to work through that to get to the other side of that. And then our performers will swing drastically based upon the final result of that.
I did hear you reference the statement of works with JLG and Stantec. I do appreciate that time is money, so you threw out a number of $100,000 of hours expended by your group and other team members. I can't dispute that. So have you executed on any other contracts to date? Spent any real dollars besides time, even though, again, I believe time is money.
Yeah, we're not short of work.
Okay.
We certainly aren't. And neither is Stantec, neither is JLG. So both of these groups, the fact that we get Jordan Block to present here today.
No, it's a big deal.
It's huge. I don't know if, and not knowing Stantec and not knowing who Jordan Block is, I don't know that we fully understand that. And then Dave Diamond, same, you know, and I had to, spend a fair amount of time on the phone with Michelle, who's the CEO of JLG, and say, hey, and this was on the first round. It was a little easier when we were looking at acquiring, it was north of 15 acres in around, and to try to honor what I believe the DDA paid for was some of the renderings of possible, more of an event style setup. So anyway, my point in that being, yeah, we've been executing contracts between us and these guys. We've worked on a lot of those. We've got statements work. We're ready to put ink down to get these people.
Yeah, so I think I got the answer. Thank you. And it's fair. I mean, we recognize the strength of both parties' resources. So also embedded in your presentation was that you had secured a funding source. Last time you spoke, you hadn't. I know you're a venture capitalist firm. So what is that funding source that you've identified or secured?
So a lot of this we're probably going to fund internally on the front side of it. So we're going to spend our own capital to invest. And the reason is we believe we have the strength in this project to be able to bring a lot of our own capital on the front side of it. And so Forge Works will do a capital play in it. Both of these gentlemen here, Mark and Michael, have pledged to put the capital up. We're estimating that this next phase between now and the end of January is roughly $500,000.
So I did scan your purchase agreement, and it is a standard kind of form agreement, which is to be expected. It's the starting point. Has your group thought about building in or what protections that you could offer up to protect the city and the DDA from, developers? Some are notorious for, I appreciate your team and their execution and their track record, but has your team put thought to what kind of protections you could offer up to the DDA and city in this process to make sure we're not sitting with a piece of dirt with some egg on our face yet again?
Yeah, I think that is certainly the work that would need to be done between Alan and you guys and with the city. And yeah, there will need to be some protections in there for you guys.
Okay.
Alan, I don't know if you want to speak to that at all.
Certainly, I can, all I can say is one of the things we do have in the agreement already, and it may not be obvious, is a termination right if the DDA determines that the development that this group has put forward isn't consistent with what your goals and visions are for this property. So there's actually built into there a termination right by the DDA if it ends up being something that is not consistent with what you guys have set out. And so obviously that's some protection to say we get to the point and you don't like where we are, that there's an opportunity for you to pull the plug on it.
Yeah, I did see that. And there's also protections on the other side, which I would expect. So.
And I would argue that the protections for the DDA, that's not necessarily a market situation. It's a pretty unique opportunity to say that the seller has the right to just pull it if it doesn't meet their goals and objectives. So
understood. I think my final question, and I'll ask it of both of you, is can you describe in kind of plain English for the rest of us, why you want to do this development in Woodland Station? As an outside group coming into our community, what's your motivation? I mean, obviously, we want this to be profitable for anyone that engages. We want it to add value to the community. We want it to start recouping some of our money spent in this property process. But what is your main motivation from your perspective?
My son is 20, my oldest boy is 23 years old. Out of high school, he started a little landscape company. And he was roughly 2 years into building that landscape company. And if any of you guys have ever done landscape work, you know the brutalness it takes on and the toll it takes on one's body when you do that. And he said to me, he said, and I asked him, I said, son, same question you just asked me. What do you like about landscape? Why are you doing this? And let me tell you, at 20 years old, he was making more money than most CEOs in Colorado Springs. He just bought his first 80 acres of the property, paid cash for it, had a house on it. The kid was doing okay, owed nobody any money, and he was killing it in Colorado Springs. And I assumed the answer to that question as a 20-year-old kid was going to be, it's about the money, Dad. Look at me. You know what he said to me? He said, Dad, there's nothing like seeing that customer when I do the final walkthrough after doing a full landscape of their front or their backyard. And you can see their face light up and the transformation that just took place in that property. And it was at that moment that Daddy was proud. Because Daddy was able to listen to his son tell that story and know that he was doing it for the right reasons.
Thank you.
And my answer is the same.
Okay, thank you. Any other questions before we bring up Mr. Wagner or Derek? Switching between formal and informal. Okay, thank you, Sarah.
Thank you.
So we'll use the same process. We'll start with Matt.
Well, first, I'm sorry to interrupt, but Dustin Nelson's on line with us. He was driving up here and then called in by his president to attend another meeting, but I just wanted to give him a second to fill in any gaps on his involvement in this project and any other questions you all might have of him. So Dustin, I think you can just unmute your microphone.
You bet, you bet. Just since I got to hear some of the other presentation, let you know a little more about David Weekly. We've built over 100,000 homes. And many of those in walkable, mixed use type settings. The other group mentioned Dallas, Fort Worth in particular, and I managed that side of town in Fort Worth from 2000 until 2016 with David Weekly. And we've done many walkable, mixed use communities. We've done with large developers such as Hillwood, Ross Perot Company, Hillwood Communities. We've also done Hometown and North Richland Hills, a large mixed use community that we're still building in today after 20 years. We've been named to Fortune's 100 best companies to work for 16 times. And only one other home builder has made that list more than once. We actually made the top 10 this year at number 9. So I think we bring a lot of experience, excited about a walkable community. And I haven't in my years, and I even managed the Hometown project, we know, had one where a lot of the retail component is already there any better than downtown Woodland Park and Woodland Station. What Derek's group brought to David Weekly was an unbelievable anchor right there on the spot. But I would say Woodland Park's already done an outstanding job of making something that could support a residential component. And we're just excited to be a part of it. And I'll stay on in case Derek needs me for any of the questions.
Thank you. Okay, we'll go ahead and start with questions, and I'll give you an opportunity to make other statements if you want. Go ahead.
Yeah, it's funny that the question that I kind of had was kind of for Dustin anyway, in regards to some of the concepts and what they're thinking for the residential. You know, I know there's talk about, you know, a 3-story, you know, a little higher end type of structure, type of residence that would be, you know, of course, mountain feel, rooftop deck type situation. I'd like to see, I'm looking forward to seeing a little more worked out concepts on those and what we're thinking for the single family homes as well, and how that's all going to integrate in walking space, green space, mixed use, etc.
John?
My question would be infrastructure. That was never mentioned that I remember and what you presented. What are your guys' ideas with that as far as utilities, street, all that? Are you gonna be relying on the city of Woodland Park to help with all that?
Come on up, Mark.
Hey, y'all. Good morning. Thanks for this opportunity to speak about this project. Yeah, John, so we're prepared to move forward on that, the whole 6.3 acres and our restaurant portion. We understand the risks about the infrastructure. We understand the risks about CDOT and traffic. We are still prepared to proceed with this on that commercial portion up there. All that other, the housing components that both projects are considering, that is a whole nother animal that we will have to consider each developer. Our standpoint is going to be that we're going to bake that into the project itself, the product, the housing product. And I think you are wanting to know, are we going to come back and say, yep, we need $1.5 million in infrastructure funds? We might, but we don't intend to do it right now at all. We're hoping that the project can stand on its own to handle those expenses. Does that answer your question?
Yes.
Okay.
Mr. Bourne?
From neither of these two presentations, I haven't seen any reflections on how to handle that intermittent waterway that runs through that property. I recognize that probably fits into the risk and the environmental category. But in addition to it, all the other questions here too are certainly in my arena. Yeah.
The concept. And Dustin, you may want to speak to this question, but we're trying to incorporate that area as green space. It is a cumbersome feature of this property. But if we can reroute it in some way, either that it's on that southern property line up against the U-Chief, or that we incorporate it into some kind of green space, that's what we'll do. Okay.
Jerry?
Yeah, there's another way to describe that waterway, and that's the headwaters of Fountain Creek. And that it connotates a lot of attention that I don't think we would be wise to gloss over that aspect of it. The other thing that I think everybody should be totally aware of is that at one time there was grave concerns about the benzene in the soil. And hence that is why I feel that the housing was relegated to the second level off the first level. I think that everybody should be aware of that. Depending on who's telling the story, it changes and all, but there's should be some research into that. And
Yeah, we've obviously, David Maharis is our civil, and we've already been in discussions with.
Okay, as long as everybody's
Fountain Creek
fully
Headway
aware.
and Headwaters and all that.
Yeah.
Complicated stuff.
Yeah. So, let's see, there's something else. Now, as far as the, well, let's just call that good. Thank you.
Mr. Neal?
Chairman, I've already telegraphed the two questions I was going to ask on behalf of the public, so I'll repeat them. The lots, when you look at the chart, and I'm glad we do have this chart up, do you envision those as being sold individually, or just the buildings, or kind of a rental situation? Do you have you put?
Dustin, you want to chime in?
Absolutely. So right now, well, you didn't ask about rental. I think it wasn't the answer the first time. Right now, what we have considered is single family detached units. All of those lots would be sold individually. Is
Thank you
that
very much.
Yeah.
That's sufficient. At this point in the design and concept, the citizens have got a flavor of what you're thinking. And the second question is the terms affordable versus attainable. Were you thinking these would be subsidized quarters, or in your definition of affordable versus attainable, or would these probably be not subsidized by the taxpayers? It would, so the one step up on the affordable and attainable scale, basically.
Yeah, thus far, we are not considering this any subsidized type project. And to be honest, 3-story product with roof decks, I think it would be attainable among other lots that size, but I'd be cautious even calling it attainable. I think it's a more high-end detached townhome type product today. If the economics changed, I'm not saying we couldn't change, but that's what we are considering today is 100% for sale, detached, single family homes. And again, we do some affordable type things, but it takes a real cooperation of the entire community. I think the biggest one we're in today is Miller in Austin. I'm not real familiar with the details of how that public financing has come, but 25% of the units there have to meet that criteria. I bet that price point has moved quite a bit, but that's not the intent here, at least not as of today.
Thank you very much. And I'm glad we have this picture up because I now have a different question for your team. I see that your design brings a street down and through what is the recently acquired property that belongs to Mr. Weatherford. But I don't see the northern property that belongs to Mr. Weatherford included. So where are you in your discussions with, is there any relationship other than the lower property for Mr. Weatherford?
So we too have been talking with Arden about some kind of collaboration for a long time. What we wanted to show today is some kind of connection through to west that does not use going through the back of Vector Bank. That grade and that slope, we think is going to be too tough to navigate. So we want to show that. We got permission from Arden to show that. He's been talking directly with David Weekly as well. The upper portion where their AmeriGas is, we're leaving that up to Arden on how he wants to bring it into we want him to bring his land into this concept, but we didn't want to presume on that. So we didn't show anything connecting there, but logically there should be some kind of interest there. If we could get it straight across from Pine Street, that would be great to line that up, because there is a left turn median cut if you're heading westbound. So that's what we look for, but we didn't want to presume that on Arden for this presentation.
Thank you very much.
Is that okay?
That's sufficient. And you did show three things: the Tava, the climbing gym, and the beer garden. I can see the red building would be the Tava. Where were you envisioning? I don't see the climbing gym clearly marked, unless that's the orange area. Is that?
No, it's not on there. It's just, essentially for those 6.3 acres, I need control of it to pursue anything of this, but having control of it brings the other parts in line to bring experiences to guests and residents of Woodland Park. So again, I don't want to put the cart before the horse. If I can get a hold of 6.3, get something worked out with David Weekly or Forge Works, whomever that may be, and having the AmeriGas portion in there, that's not part of the 6.3. I can't speak on that. I'd love to get a hold of it, and work it all out, develop it. Ideally, that's where I would want the climbing gym, right there, front side of 24, beer garden in between. And again, the whole design and concept of top, it's still, that's not finalized. This is just to give the DDA and the city an idea of what we can accomplish.
Yeah. Thank you. And then last would be, are you going to be presenting an actual written proposal for our review?
Yep.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. Hey, can I ask a question about that? How do we proceed with, you want us to pass these out? Is this written signed offer, or do you want us to send it to you via email? What would be best for the board?
I would prefer that you send it electronically to Rusty.
Okay.
Then he and I will collaborate on where it goes from there.
Got it. Okay. But we do have the written signed offer right here.
Okay.
Okay.
Okay, my turn. Okay, so I'm gonna ask some of the same questions. Have you thought about protections for the DDA city in this process?
I assume that would come through with the disposition agreements and all of that to be worked out in the next few weeks.
Correct. Okay. And I'm gonna follow up on Rusty's last question, just for clarity in my mind. So what I thought I heard was Tava, this group wants to take responsibility, make an offer on the 6.3 acres. And then I think earlier in your presentation, you alluded to David Weekly would be working with you to work out placement of things and whether they worked with the other parties, i.e. Weatherford or not. Is that still fair? Is that something, Dustin, you can weigh in on now, or is it premature or improper?
No, absolutely. All of our iterations have combined parts of one or both of Arden's properties as well as the DDAs. And with Tava Group being willing to step up and purchase the DDA section and early works with Climbing Gym and Beer Garden, we just decided not to show that on this presentation, but that is absolutely, we could foresee the green street that you see going through this plan to continue up along between the Tava House and Beer Garden and Climbing Gym. So the whole of the property, both the residential and the commercial components, becomes very walkable to downtown Woodland Park.
Thank you. May I ask the same question? Well, I think Mr. Weaver already answered that. It's premature to think about particular TIF agreements within the property as that's not defined yet. And I think it's fair to say that Chad and his group are in the same place. That future, those kind of requirements or needs will be defined. Is that fair?
I think it's fair, maybe one variance, I'm sorry. One variance on that, on the TIF would be if a particular anchor came in and was looking for some relief, the whole of the project, I don't think we're looking for.
Right. Well, I perceive based on my knowledge or limited knowledge of development is as this is carved up, which it will be, or defined, each of those entities may have different needs. So that's how I'm looking at it. I asked the same question. We know you've invested a lot of time. Can you guesstimate your total monies, the real dollars spent to date?
Depends if we include the bouldering gym as well, because that right now we spent 120 just on our other site prep that we're going to essentially just throw in the trash, most of it, and start over again. But again, already contracted with civil architect again for a revamp, if you will, inclusive of the bouldering gym, probably another $500,000.
Okay. And I just wanted to, based on my research, you made a statement about David Weekly being the largest home builder. They're the largest private home builder in the country. So I just wanted to put that on the record. They're out of Houston. It's very stout as well. I think the big question is the same thing is, given everything, and again, from my chair, projects have to make sense from a funding perspective, from a profitability perspective, and have to be market driven. I'm kind of built that way. But describe your motivation for developing Woodland Station.
Always wanted to bring a complete synergy and connect the town with each other, and having a project like this, same with what ForgeWorks wants to do, I think can do that. And the question I ask myself is, why does this stuff keep falling in my lap? And I keep saying yes. But my grandfather was a surgeon for Chiang Kai-shek's army in China back in the early 60s. packed up the family, came here to the States, and has been a devout Christian his whole life. He's not here with us anymore, but everything that came into his life, everything that's come into my life, he described it as God's timing is perfect, and these things keep happening. Other deals come along. Maybe they don't work out the way I want. Maybe I'm a little upset at it first go around, but I look back at it, it might have happened for a reason, and have this opening and this opportunity to try to bring this to town. It's kind of uncanny.
And I suspect the other owners that are local feel the same.
Can't speak for them.
Yeah.
But yes, everybody that I've met along the way too, team players, they just, everything comes together, and it's a great thing.
Okay, well, thank you. And thank you to both groups for your.
Can I ask one more question?
Oh, sure. Hey, Derek.
Derek, I got a question. If you weren't given the contract on Woodland Station, would you still, you purchased property for the Tava House and you have property on Boundary for your rock gym, would you still pursue those projects?
Oh, yeah.
Just,
yeah, it's just, this is the place it needs to be.
Mr. Neal has, and I appreciate, this is, I think, a very important meeting for the DDA. So appreciate your patience and time, taking the time to do this. Mr. Neal?
Chairman Perry, you asked one other question to the first project that I would ask that you ask again regarding the protection of the city and the DDA.
Sorry.
Could you ask the same question to the second part?
So yes, it's at the bottom of my page. That's why I missed it. So have you thought about protections for the DDA during this development? I think, no.
Yeah, we did this one.
I did ask that. Yeah, I did ask that and did it.
Okay.
Basically, paraphrasing, they communicated that that would be worked out through the disposition agreement, the development agreement, and is that fair?
Yep.
Okay. Oh, I guess I do have one more question for you with respect to the other group laid out a timeline. What's your perspective on timeline?
Go ahead, Mark.
So we've already spent a truckload of money on Tava. So we have another $100,000 to spend to tweak it one more time for this site. Once we do that, we'll do our submittals with Karen, get through that. I don't know that we can break ground between now and the end of the year, but certainly by next spring. And it'll probably take 12 months to construct. If we can get going this fall, that'd be great, but it just depends about weather and how long it takes to get through the entitlements.
Thank you. Thank you. Okay. Mr. Williams wanted to say something. Nice to see you.
Thank you.
Please get up to the microphone.
Refer to Chad on this, but since the possibility exists that should Tava not be given the proposal, then we're really talking about a housing developer versus the other complex idea that we bring. And I think if I was a resident, I would be asking the question, what other strengths of anchors, restaurants, et cetera, might the Forge Works group be bringing should Tava, but we would love to work with the prime local restaurant and probably primarily, but should they not choose to join us if we were granted the proposal. So Chad, could you address relationships and anchors and that type of thing, or whatever you're comfortable with? No pressure.
I would actually, let's say that, because I think, I believe we have a good sense of the spirit from both groups. I don't think we need to rehash that, in my opinion.
I'd prefer not to answer that, just because I think we're well connected with some of the finest restaurants in the country. So through coaching, I've helped launch steakhouses in Denver and you know, sat with the CEOs of that during the launch of those. I think it's premature because I don't even know if that's a right fit for Woodland Park in our process. And so it's better to have the design and walk the methodology that Stantec and JLG are world-class at. Through that process, then you end up with the finest tapestry built at the end of the day. And I'll close with one statement. If I had a picture of the Mona Lisa hanging here, and I had a sheet that was draped over the top of it, and I started pulling that sheet of the Mona Lisa, and you got to see the top quarter of it, you'd say that's kind of an ugly picture and it isn't worth the air we breathe right here, right now, which is, I guess, is pretty important. But if I unveil the whole thing, it's a beautiful, beautiful picture, right? And I think what I'm talking about is let the artist go to work and build that Mona Lisa for Woodland Park and let them pull it together. So I'll close with that.
Okay, since you got a closing statement, Mr. Wagoner, you want to make a closing statement or pass? Okay, great answer. Okay, thank you. Okay, so I think as chair, I'm going to drive this particular day, this particular process or these agenda items to conclusion by kind of talking about what I see are next steps. And because we do have a few more agenda items that you're all welcome to leave once we get to that. And these gentlemen have to get back to work as well as myself. So one of the things I heard up here from the dais with all the people chatting on the side is that they're not ready to make a final decision today. I didn't, coming into the day, I didn't know if that would happen or not, but I think I see a consensus that we're not ready to make that final decision. So with that, I'm proposing kind of the following process. I'm a process person. I'm a data person, IT guy in my former life. And so I'm going to rattle through it, board. If you want to add something to it or challenge me on something, please feel free to do so. I think one thing that's critical, you know, we've been in this process. The Williams Group has been here 2.5 years. Tava Group kind of got walked out of the room and then has circled back. This has been a long process, and it's nice to see 2 proposals emerge, which that 60-day pause allowed for people to either step up or not step up. And I think we have 2 parties that stepped up. I will also say that one of the things I heard from Mr. Williams in the presentation is that it most likely would be a housing development. I just want to signal from I'm just one vote of many. But I think there has to be commercial elements to this clearly, because from a tax perspective, and I hate to say that word, it's the only way that the taxpayers ultimately can start recovering some of the monies that have been spent on Woodland Station in the entire process for the last 21 years. With that, and so I will challenge you to push the accelerator on that tapestry if we come back in the future. So what I'm proposing is because of sunshine laws and the rules, this board has painstakingly worked really hard not to have illegal meetings, which basically are more than 3 members at a time discussing DDA business. The thing we have to be careful of, and I want to remind every board member, reply all is our enemy. Never reply all when doing DDA business, please, with your emails. It's inadvertent, but what I'm proposing, and I'm willing to carve out time, which is money, is that we start gathering data. So it starts with, I'll make a commitment to meet with each board member one-on-one to get all of your thoughts, questions, concerns that weren't expressed today after you have time to think about both presentations. We'll take that data. We'll work to create an apples to apples grid. Thank you for that. To try to start comparing these projects apples to apples. And it may show us some holes where we need to go back with one applicant or the other to get the answer to fill that grid in, if you will. I would also like us to solicit feedback from the city council, from the city manager, definitely city planning, because I think the biggest element here, besides, we have the overlay district, but this entitlement process, we need to make sure that we understand how it's going to work and communicate that to both applicants or the final applicant. My preference on how I prefer to work with attorneys is for us to do all the legwork, to review the contracts, to review the presentations, the LOI, put together our requirements. I kind of asked both parties, and I suspect they both have ideas in their head, but it's really up to us to figure out, working with the city and eventually our attorneys, to identify those things that give us protections for the taxpayers ultimately in this process, because development is a very difficult thing. And so really what I'm proposing is a very concise 2-week period to get that data gathered. So I need a commitment from each of the board members to carve out time for that, to get it collated, to get it in some kind of format that's readable for all of us. I would ask our council liaison to also clear the way for us to have those discussions with each of the council members to gather their feedback, because ultimately they're responsible for oversight of this board, and ultimately they're closer to the citizens because they actually get elected. And it's a big haul. I will say, Chad, I love your aspirational concept of drawing people into the community. And I never poo-poo those efforts. We've been trying to do it for 20 plus years. To define Woodland Park, it's been difficult. We do have a lot of drive-by traffic. Ultimately, I'm going to make my decision based on what is best for the citizens of Woodland Park who are here year-round, or at least most of the year. We have a lot of snowbirds. Yes, we want to pay attention to driving economic activity and trying to get some of those folks to stop. But I suspect, and I'm just being honest, that a residential only doesn't necessarily get us there. So that's the challenge to you, is that I guess I'm signaling my perspective as chair now. So I will commit to that if each board member will. The city has already offered to meet and to hammer out some of those details that are important in the process for the DDA to understand. The city has been super cooperative and supportive, so thank you for that. It also allows for our new board member to get back this week and have her engaged in the process. I think she's going to bring a lot of valuable perspective as another local business owner. So if everyone's okay with that, to going into a very focused, massive data gathering collation mode to come up with something that we can look at and maybe make a final decision on. I would argue that we've wasted enough time on. I think the challenge for us is to get that data collated and to make the hard decision. Just make the decision and go, period. And whichever way it goes. I think we're having pressures in the economy, but from my vantage point, both projects are poised to, it may be the perfect timing. If I'm right that we're coming out of recession in 18 plus months, it's probably perfect timing for bringing this project online, if you will. Do I hear any dissent on that approach or any additions or ideas with respect to that approach?
Sounds good.
No, think it looks good. Okay. Okay, with that, we thank both applicants. Appreciate your time and effort over these last couple of years, really. And even some of us who haven't been up here have still been engaged and paying attention. So we appreciate your serious attention, bringing serious players to the table, and giving us an option, maybe a viable option or two viable options for the first time, in my opinion, in the history of this project. So thank you very much.
Make a comment to Mike's question about suggestions for a restaurant. I dare you, I double dog dare you to go on Woodland Park community page and ask the community what they want. I guarantee you they'll be a mile long.
Chick-fil-A. Okay, thank you, everyone. We'll go ahead and finish with our agenda. And an important one that Mr. Taylor's been sitting in the back patiently waiting on.
He left. Tanner left.
No, Mr. Taylor.
Oh, Mr. Taylor.
Treasurer's report. Yeah, I'm gonna do that. Oh,
Members.
oh, correct. Thank you, Dan.
It's not on my agenda. It's not on my agenda.
What's not? It says audience participation for items not on the agenda. Yep. But maybe that's where it's going. I don't know.
I've been told that our other members have left the building. Kind of don't blame them. Okay. So yes, the treasurer's report I will hand out. Again, Mr. Vasilati with the city, our finance director. Updated our budgets per our guidance earlier this year. It was presented to council and approved. So we appreciate Aaron's great work and Rusty's support on that. Other than that, the other treasurer item is we do have a request from Mr. Taylor Mountain Enterprises to request a TIF reimbursement. He is showing that he has paid his taxes, and what I would like to do is get, I believe, and help me out, I'm hesitant to quote this because at this juncture, we've been making sure that the city finance director has checked everything before we say, but I believe your reimbursement amount is $67,3170. Does that sound correct? That's what I'm seeing based on your data. And so what we'll do is we'll work with Aaron right away and get that processed. I will be bringing, just so the board knows, some new forms, some new processes that we'll work out with the city to make sure it's cleaner, and we'll also document the processes and how information will flow. And basically, sorry, Matt, get that treasurer function so dialed in with the help of Aaron that it just kind of runs on its own. So that's our goal.
It's great.
Yeah.
Backup.
So can I get a motion to, after the value has been verified by the city, that we go ahead and process that transaction for Mr. Taylor?
I'll make a motion to process the TIF reimbursement after verification has been completed.
Thank you.
Seconded by Bourne.
Okay, second by Mr. Bourne, first by Mr. Neal. We'll call for the question.
Matt McCracken, yes.
John Gamelke, yes.
Yes, Bourne.
Good, yes.
Perry, yes.
Neil, yes.
Okay. And a lot of papers up here. So I promise that future meetings will not be as elongated, at least with the normal agenda. So I guess the final thing I will say is that if we take this very expedited approach to gathering data, do we want to consider having a special focus session just for the purposes of discussing the collected data prior to the end of this month? Would everyone be open to that?
Yes.
Is that a meeting without just?
It would be.
It still has to be public, correct?
It's, yes, because as
Work.
chair, I will never sanction a non-public meeting.
Do we not ask the two applicants to come forward? It would just be, how would that work out?
How I envision it is that we get the document pulled together and we have had a chance to review it. And then we ask the applicants to come back only for the purposes of answering succinct questions. And then we may want to add a component. I didn't mention citizens. I've been trying to think about how do we gather data from the citizens so it's a real data subset that's meaningful, not just a couple of people and how they feel.
And this would just be a point of information for the board members. If there is no vote, you could have a work session. If the intent was to vote on a project, then it would have to be a special meeting in which a vote is then taken.
Well, the work session would still be public though, correct?
Both of them have to be public.
Yeah. And that's what I would advocate for is a public work session with not with the intent of making a decision. I think frankly, this finally having two applicants that have pros and cons, I think we should plan on communicating to them that that first meeting in August will target trying to make a decision after our collective work and the work session. Is that fair? I think we have to give this proper thought and we could be split, which is okay. I mean, I think it's a big deal and it's a good opportunity with the applicants we have. So if that's okay, I'll drive that. The other thing to know, again, I've already signaled as chair, we'll never have a non-public meeting. We'll also continue to be very careful with the sunshine laws. We'll keep communicating about that. We'll set up some processes to make it easier to work and communicate without triggering those. We want everyone's input. This is an important thing for our city. And now's the time to seize upon the opportunities before us. So let's put the work in the next couple of weeks. And again, you'll see one of the things, you'll see some differences in my style. I'm going to bring Rebecca up. She'll sit on the dais with us, so it's easier for her to hear us and to communicate with us. And we will be more formalized, kind of mimicking what the city does with roll call and proper voting. I know you love Robert's rules. I love it to a point. We'll follow them as much as we need to. And I think the final thing is that I do want to, just as Jerry did, I do want to acknowledge that Mary Jo was chair of this board since 2001. And she put a lot of effort, a lot of time, a lot of blood, sweat, and tears. You're going to find that I have a different leadership management style, but let's applaud Mary Jo for her community service and serving on this board all that time. So wanted to make sure we put that on the record. So thank you. Okay, we are adjourned.